Hello everyone and welcome back to SWTOR 3.0, and today we're taking a look at the Arsenal spec Mercenary. Now I haven't been online for a few days. I had a few internet connection issues that I've had to deal with. I've been on the phone, very angry exchanges with my internet provider, but when I'm back, that's a good excuse. Apparently my phone line keeps going faulty, which does affect your internet, so back online, and we're taking a look at the new and improved, I have to say, Arsenal spec Mercenary. So what's changed? Well, a great deal has changed. Our gameplay style is still pretty much the same. We're still same priorities mostly, but the biggest change is we have mobility. We can move around and shoot now with most of our abilities. Now the biggest change has come to our unload, which is now blazing bolts. The difference between unload and blazing bolts is that unload is no longer on our quick bar. We don't need it. I just keep it there because if I'm a healer I can just swap it back there. So blazing bolts has replaced unload. It does a bit more damage. It does share a cooldown with unload, and through the magic of utilities can now be used on the move. Let's have a little look at it. Nicely done. So we never have to get this interrupted if we have to move out of something, which is pretty key when it comes to 3.0. A lot of the HM flashpoint bosses and the ops bosses require us to move around a lot, so we'll take a look at our utilities while we talk about that. So we'll start with our skillful ones. Skillful, I quite like power barrier. Again, power shot, tracer missile, rapid scan generate a power barrier that increases your damage reduction by 1%, 15 seconds, it stacks up to 5 times. Again, we are going to be using tracer missile quite a bit, and we're also going to be using power shot as a cooldown, so, well, as a filler rather than the cooldown. So again, we can usually keep the 5% damage reduction. We can keep this buff up for most of the time. Again, we had this in the Arsenal tree before. The other thing I like to take is bore sights, which increases the damage dealt by our sweeping blaster. Sweeping blasters is of course our weaker AoE. We've got death from above and we got sweeping blasters as our main AoE. Again, if we're in those situations where we have to deal with trash, then they're pretty useful. If the other one, the third one, is entirely optional. Again, if you're having energy issues, improved vents. Maybe if you're getting stunned a lot, jet escape. Perhaps reduce the cooldown of jet boost by 5 seconds and determination by 30 seconds. Determination is your breakout of stun. So again, PvP, you're probably going to take this. I tend to go with custom enviro suit. Gets me a nice little bit of healing, especially for things like questing. It's pretty handy because again it gives us more HP and it gives us a nice 3% healing boost, because one of the big things that has been nerfed is our off-spec healing. This is for most of the classes, with the exception of course of the sorcerer. They don't get nerfed. That's BioWare's favourite class. We can't expect them to nerf their favourite class now, can we? So they've all been nerfed. So the big thing we have lost, let's talk about what we've lost briefly. We have lost rapid scan as a heal. They have gave us a new defensive cooldown, which is just emergency scan. Emergency scan is basically a defensive cooldown that we've got. Our instant cast heal, just pop it on. There we go. Little instant cast heal. Again, it's a nice extra defensive cooldown. We also get Colto shot, which again is just a replacement for rapid shots. Rapid shots no longer heals us. You can see we can't target ourselves, and we hit rapid shots, just says target not enemy. We have to use Colto shot now, so I don't like this, to be honest with you. I don't like that extra button, but it's nice to have there as a little spammable, and it's nice to get the little boost from it, from the custom enviro suit. But again, I don't really feel, I mean, gyroscopic alignment jets, maybe if we're getting stunned a lot. If there's bosses that immobilize and stun us, we can vent some heat maybe instead of improved vents. So these are kind of situational. Rocket punch, immobilizing the target. Nah, not really. Not really wanting that for PvE. Move on to our masterful ones. I quite like Pyro Shield. Pyro Shield is a nice little it's a nice little DPS increase. Bear in mind that if we are going to pop our energy shield, it's generally when we're taking quite a few damage, quite a bit of damage. So if we're still taking damage, it reflects some of the damage that we're taking back to our attacker. Pretty nice little cooldown. It does elemental damage back to the attacker. The other thing I like is torque boosters. It increases the duration of hydraulic overrides by 4 seconds. Bear in mind that a lot of these bosses are going to be rooting us. There's going to be a lot of things that are rooting, a lot of things that are snaring us in PvE. So increasing the time that hydraulic overrides is active makes us immune. We are immune from movement impairing effects, knockdowns, and physics while that is up. So that is a nice little benefit, because there's a lot of fights. There's particularly, if you look at the first boss in the Legacy of the Rakata flashpoint, it's the Rancor and the War Chief. You have, you're getting rooted quite a lot. So bear in mind, if we have the extra 4 seconds of hydraulic overrides, we are immune to roots. Hydraulic overrides will also remove roots. Cure can also remove roots as well. But hydraulic override is pretty nice because we are getting rooted and stunned quite a bit by these things. So getting that immunity is a nice little bonus to us. I find that an extra 4 seconds of knockback immunity is pretty nice. Again, for the rest, I don't really see much of a point, to be honest. Suit FOE is mostly a PvP thing again, or unless there's a fight where there's heavy dot damage going out, maybe we could have heat dampening, eliminates the heat generated by jet boost, concussion missile, cure, and electro dart. Heat's not a huge issue in DPS spec anymore. Heat not a huge issue for this, so maybe for PvP we're having to electro dart a lot of things. Electro dart is our stun. So maybe there's not a lot of situations in PvE, and bear in mind bosses can't be stunned, so and cleanse is more of a healer thing, so maybe as a healer you'd maybe want this, but not as a DPS. Infrared scanners is a waste of time. Protective shields, should I say. Increase all healing received by 20% while energy shield is active. It's a nice one, again, if we're gonna get low health. A lot of low health. Maybe you could take this instead of Pyro Shield. Maybe a little replacement. You can pop that, and again you can pop off some heals on yourself. You can use both Energy Shield and Emergency Scan and get a 20% boost on Emergency Scan, and of course all healing you receive from the healer. So it might be useful. Again, Energy Shield reduces our activation pushback by 30% and makes us immune to interrupts. We don't take this because of our level 59 ability. We get blowback, so being interrupted grants blowback, which makes our next blazing bolts immune to interrupts. So again, we don't really need that because we can always get that. Blazing bolts we're going to be using quite a bit. Heroic ones, we're moving on to them. One mandatory one I would say is Thrill of the Hunt. Thrill of the Hunt allows unload blazing bolts and progressive scan to be activated while moving. This is crucial for Arsenal spec because we are going to be moving around a lot, and if we're in the middle of a blazing bolts channel and we have to move, not having this ability is a huge DPS loss. It is a huge DPS loss for us because having to cut off our blazing bolts is our main source of damage in this spec. So again, I would go with that as a mandatory one. The other one is up for debate. Debatable whether Supercharged Reserves. Supercharged Reserves, maybe you want to take that. Again, reduces the cooldown of Cure and Disabling Shot. So if you're in a situation where you're having to do a lot of interrupts, maybe on if you're doing Gate Commander Draxus, although I hear there is a buff that reduces your interrupt cooldown, because bear in mind our interrupt cooldowns have been increased. So again, the big increase for DPS is that it gets 10 stacks of supercharged gas while we're using recharge and reload. So we can essentially start the fight before the pull. We would be generating supercharge with our recharge and reload, and we'd start the fight with 10 stacks of supercharged gas. Bear in mind that supercharged gas is available for all 3 specs. So supercharged gas increases the damage dealt by Tracer Missile, Heat Seeker Missile, Blazing Bolts, Priming Shot, grants supercharged velocity, which increases alacrity by 1%. So again, it is available for all 3. It used to just be a healer thing, supercharge, and it is 10 charges now instead of 30. So again, it is a nice little DPS increase, you could argue. But it is only an increase at the start of the fight, because again we'll be generating the 10 stacks over the course. So I tend to favour power overrides, which reduces the cooldown of concussion missile and power surge, and grants power surge a second charge. So it makes the next 2 abilities instead of 1 have an instant activation time. I tend to favour this because we are moving around a lot, and we tend to get tracer missile. We can use, you know, potentially 3 of them in a row. 3 in a row without things, because priming shot, our new ability, makes our tracer missile activate instantly. So we'll take a little look at our DPS rotation. I like to open with, before our rotation, we'll talk about rotation before first, shall we? Before it was unload, then we'd fire power surge, we'd fire 2 tracer missiles, and then we'd go back to unload, which is now blazing bolts, of course. So that was tended to be our rotation. Our opener now tends to be priming shot. Priming shot is a nice opener because we'll talk about what priming shot does. You get that's not the one, there it is. Iron sight, so increases the damage dealt by dart attacks, missile attacks, and priming shot by 10%. So, but it does additionally mark the target. Priming shot will mark the target, and marked targets take 5% more damage from ranged weapon attacks. So we want to open up. If we open up with our priming shot, we will get a 5% damage boost on our blazing bolts. So we fire that off, and then we fire our blazing bolts. Next, then it's the insta-cast. The insta-cast priming shot, tracer missile, and then back to blazing bolts with the barrage proc. Again, this is a nice one because it gets us our 2 blazing bolts, and again we want to maximize as many blazing bolts as possible. That is our ultimate goal for this, is to maximize our blazing bolts. So priming shot, blazing bolts on the move, fire this off. You can fire off a missile if you want, get back to blazing bolts. And then our secondary priority is to build up Tracer Lock. Tracer Lock increases the damage dealt by Rail Shot and reduces the activation time of Healing Scan. So that is our secondary priority, and this is where things like Power Surge come in, because if we get these 3 off, we can then pop a Power Surge and fire Tracer Missile off while moving. This is very important, because of course there is a lot of fights. That's why I think I have a problem now with these targeting dummies. A lot of people measuring their damage output and trying to decide their utilities based on what they do against the targeting dummy. Now the big problem with the targeting dummy is it doesn't do anything. It doesn't lay circles on the ground, it doesn't do anything to attack us, basically. So some people were recommending you take these 2, for example, and not take Thrill of the Hunt. I saw someone recommending that, but however, because they're basing the damage output on the targeting dummy. Now in a real fight situation, in a flashpoint or an operation situation, there is a lot of AoE damage going out, particularly if we look at a fight like Sword Squadron. That's the 2 walkers in Temple of Sacrifice. There is a lot of AoE damage going out. There is so much AoE damage going out that we really have to move. There's a lot of circles that we have to get out of. There's a lot of target switching as well. So what we have to do is be mobile, be as mobile as possible, and this build gives us that mobility. It gives us the extra 4 seconds of hydraulic overrides. It lets us use blazing bolts on the go, and again it lets us fire 2 tracer missiles on the go while priming shot is on cooldown. Priming shot should again be kept on cooldown pretty much. So your priority is always priming shot, blazing bolts, instant cast, get back to the blazing bolts, and then oops, wrong key, power surge, fire 2 of them off. Get that off, get our missile off, get our whatever comes back, then our priming shot again, then our instant cast. We could have just waited there actually for our blazing bolts to come off cooldown and got 2 of them in there. That was a mistake that we made. So our rotation is fairly straightforward, I would suggest. So it's fairly straightforward. Again, trying to get the most out of Blazing Bolts is the key to this, because Blazing Bolts is our #1 priority in terms of damage. We'll go through that one more time. Get a little Blazing Bolts off, get a little insta-cast off, get that off again. Get a Power Surge up. Get those two off, get the missile away. Then get another priming shot off. If we can hold off, just hold off and wait for those Blazing Bolts to come back. Get that fired off and then get back to our Blazing Bolts again. And you can see most of our things are coming off cooldown at a pretty nice time. Again, you can use this Heat Seeker missile, tends to be just a filler right now. Again, you can use it wherever you like, I guess. You could use it in between firing off your tracer missiles, but again, this rotation does give you a nice bit of mobility, because there's very few times where we're actually standing still to channel tracer missile, and none of these really require us to stand still. That's why I prefer it as a rotation. Again, our goal is to get 10 stacks of supercharge and then pop off our supercharged gas. Again, when Blazing Bolt, when priming shot comes off cooldown, we tend to want our supercharged gas so we can get a full rotation. We can get 2 Blazing Bolts off with supercharge is another way to do it as well. But yeah, so that's the rotation. It's fairly simple really. There's not that much filler. Again, you can also put up your dot for Electronet. Our AoE rotation is pretty much unchanged. Of course, it's going to be, oops, there we go, our Death from Above. Then Fusion Missile, we'll fire that out. It's got a much less heat cost, and then our filler is just Sweeping Blasters. So again, Fusion Missile is ticking away dots. We'd also want to hit Priming Shot on one of our targets as well to get ourselves a nice 5% boost as well to the damage that we do. But again, it's not too bad a rotation. I quite like the changes. There's a lot less filler. We're using Power Shot. I tend to find I'm using Power Shot a lot less than I used to, because we used to fill in the gaps while we were waiting for things to come off cooldown with Power Shot. Now we can kind of just wait for things to come off cooldown. Our Power Surge we're using again if we have to move. If we don't, some people say save Power Surge for when you have to move. It might be worth it on some fights just to channel these, but again, using Power Surge just gives us more burst damage. The other way to do it would have been to pop the supercharged gas right away at the beginning of the fight, and again use Priming Shot, Blazing Bolts, Instant Tracer Missile, Blazing Bolts. This is going to give you an initial damage boost, but I find over the course of the fight, and given the fact that we have to move around a lot, that I find that Power Surge tends to be the slight winner for me. Again, it may be different for you, maybe you prefer that, but again, I like this spec. I really like it, to be honest with you. I think it's very mobile now. The problem before was, of course, we'll go to our old rotation, which was always stand still, fire your Blazing Bolts, then you would probably fire off Power Surge, then you'd fire that off, get that off, get that out, then you'd get this, and then you'd be into this. Look how often we're standing still here. And then back to Blazing Bolts again. But again, look how poor our mobility was in the old rotation compared to the new rotation with our priming shots and our Blazing Bolts on the move and our instant cast tracer missiles. So again, it's just a nicer spec to play. I would probably put Electronet up somewhere in there as well. Put an Electronet up just because it's not very expensive. We don't generate that much heat again, so it's pretty straightforward spec, to be honest with you. I prefer this. I haven't really tried the what's it called now, Innovative Ordnance. I haven't had a go with that yet. I might have a little look at that and see what Mag Shot is like. Mag Shot basically replaces Tracer Missile. I haven't really had a lot of chance to play healer yet. I did do half a flashpoint, which the tank DC'd and decided to leave. Well, I guess he just DC'd and he never came back. Maybe it was my poor healing, I don't know. But we'll have a look at Bodyguard. I'll have a look at Bodyguard soon. I'm leveling a Sage, so we'll have a look at the Sage healer as well, and we'll compare all three healers. because we've already had a look at these scrapper scoundrels. So thank you for joining me for this video. I know we've gone on a little bit in this video, but there's a lot of changes to get through. I think I've covered most of the things. I mean, iron sights was a new thing, blazing bolts a new thing, blowback we covered. Yep, so again, we pretty much covered a lot in our little thing. Another thing I do like about this spec, I have to say, is tracer missile at level 10 and heat seeker missiles at level 26 is pretty nice. So again, they will be quite fun to level, these specs. Again, use the barrage prop, we covered that before. Again, right, so that is all for this video. So thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again soon, and goodbye.